Do you worry about money? Are you in debt and have no idea how you're going to get out? Then today's episode is for you. Hey ladies, I am back and I'm really excited to share today's interview with you. Her name is Kumiko Love and she is the founder of the Budget Mom blog. And I've heard of Kumiko for, I don't know, I think in the interwebs, I've just heard of the Budget Mom multiple times. And so she's a humongous following, an amazing YouTube channel, and she is a woman on a mission. And what I love about her is you can go follow her on Instagram as well. She gives like very tangible, actionable steps on how to budget your money. She's a single mom. And we had a very intimate conversation about money. I asked her about women and money and her own personal perspective on if she would have got her money stuff in order if she hadn't had a divorce. And she was very honest about that question. And we also talked about why it's so important for women, especially, to feel in control of their money. And if you've been following me for a while, you know my story is 6 years ago when I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. That was my wake-up call. I put a lot of my faith and power in my husband with the money stuff. And then realizing, it's okay if you are the partner that is not in control of your money. But if you're avoiding it, it's really, really important for you to have some understanding. Go to those meetings, have weekly money dates, and really just talk about money. Because remember, money is a relationship, and your relationship to money is really going to impact every other aspect of your life. And I hear so many women say, I can't invest in myself because one, we can't afford it, or my partner won't let me. Right there, you're taking your power away. So if you want to take your power back when it comes to money, one, figure out how to make more money and get involved with the finances and take a stand for what you want in your life and ask yourself, how can we make this happen? So I hope you enjoy today's conversation with Kumiko Love. You can check her out at thebudgetmom.com and also on Instagram. Let's dive in. All right, Kumiko, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I love these conversations with passionate women, especially when it comes to money, because I think this is one of those taboo subjects that women don't like to talk about a lot. And I know that this is everything that you talk about on a daily basis. So the Budget Mom, how did you come to this whole concept of becoming the mom who talks about money and helping women feel in control around that?
Yeah, so the Budget Mom was really created out of my frustration and struggle with money management in my life. I grew up in a family where money wasn't talked about. Like you said, it was really a subject that wasn't brought up. What I saw was my mom, who was a single mom herself. She worked 3 jobs to raise me and my sister. And so my experience with money management was struggle. And that's what I saw and experienced on a daily basis with my mom. It's funny, I came from a place, I graduated with a finance and accounting degree with a minor in economics, but I had no real concept and knowledge of personal finance. And that struggle became very real when I had my son. And then ultimately when I went through a divorce and had to learn how to manage my money, not with 2 incomes, but with one, at the same time of having this guilt of not being able to provide the life I wanted for my son. And so through that frustration and really that financial journey of mine, which I started sharing online, that's ultimately how the Budget Mom was born. I was searching for a community, people who understood what I was feeling as a single mom trying to get her finances in order.
I love that. So what was I think it's interesting that you talked about this around you said you had a finance degree, correct?
Correct.
And then how that and personal finance is very different, because oftentimes I know myself in my own experience, when I was like so desperate to learn about money, the internet wasn't the first place that I turned to. So I didn't go to the bloggers or, the Dave Ramsey's. Sometimes I say Gordon Ramsay, but I mean to say Dave Ramsey's of the money world. And you go to the bank or you go to a financial advisor and you're not getting personal finance advice.
Right. It's funny. What I learned in college was corporate finance. So I learned the economics and analytics of corporate finance. And then I got out of college and I worked at a financial advisory firm. I worked in the finance industry for over 9 years. I dealt with retirement accounts, rules and regulations of the finance industry, and ultimately investments. And it's funny that you could work in that type of environment for so long and know so little about personal finance. It's a subject that I feel is not talked or taught a lot in the public educational system, as well as, there are some great programs at banks and at other financial advisory firms, but a lot of the time, my first experience with learning how to do it, I did turn to the internet. I'm the type of person, I went onto Google and I put in how to budget my money, how to save money, how to pay off debt. And the thing that makes the Budget Mom very different is when I did that and I took that step, the first thing that I felt was complete overwhelm, because the information is absolutely crazy out there. You are handed so many different options, so many different choices, but on top of that, you're handed a one-size-fits-all approach. And that in the beginning was trying to fit myself in this finance box that conformed to this one-size-fits-all approach, and it just wasn't working for me.
I don't love that, but I love how you sought it out. And yeah, I think that's too often what everyone's trying to do in every area of their life, right? I talk a lot about parenting and how to feel in control, and people are like, give me the step-by-step guidance. I'm like, I'll give you a template, but there is this kind of portion of yourself, especially when it comes to something that you don't have the confidence around, or maybe when you're starting around money, so you're seeking out the professional thinking they know all the answers, but there is like a component where you do have to trust yourself. And I want to talk about budgeting in general. I heard you say on another interview, budgeting is easy. Like, actually creating a budget is easy, but it's the psychology behind it, because I've heard people say you can't spend that $100 a month on your lattes. And then other people say, hey, if that's what brings you joy, do it. So I'm kind of curious of your perspective on all of that.
So the first thing I would say is that writing down numbers on a piece of paper and creating a budget that way, yes, it is easy. And what I mean by that, and when I tell my followers, you have to do the hard work, what I mean is the hard work starts with you. Because a debt payoff journey, or even a financial journey, it is a true self-discovery journey. And self-discovery is hard, because all of a sudden we are forced to look at ourselves in a brand new way. We're forced to answer the hard questions. One of the things I get from my readers is, Miko, why are there so many blank open spots? Like so many, like blank spots when it comes to your budgeting method. And I always tell them, the reason these steps have such a big portion that are left undone is because I want you to fill those in for yourself. You have to ask the hard questions in order to not just make change, but we're talking about lasting change. And with lasting change, there is a life change that needs to happen. And that really starts with the individual. It's learning about not just the numbers. And I always say that this is not about the numbers. When you're paying off debt, it is not about how much debt you are paying off. It's about learning to manage your money and building the skill set you need to stay out of debt. And one of those skill sets is learning about yourself and who you are. And so when I talk about it being easy, I mean the pure fact of just doing the robot work. Making debt payments, yeah, it's a little bit hard. There's some other internal emotions that we feel when we're paying off debt, but really it's something deeper and so much bigger.
Do you think you would have done this work if you were married or when you were married?
That's really, you were the first person to ever ask me that. It's funny because when I was married for over 6 years, and I look back at our marriage, and I cannot remember one single conversation that we ever had about money. And that tells me two really important things. One, we didn't care as much as we knew about our finances. And two, there was no open communication or teamwork around what was happening with our money.
Mm.
I think that if I knew what I knew, like if I know what I knew now back when I was married, I think that the conversation as well as the partnership, I feel like would have been a lot different. Because to be completely honest, when I was married, I lost who I was. I was so focused on being a good mom, being a good wife, having this picture perfect life. I forgot about me as an individual and what made me happy. And through my financial journey, I really rediscovered myself. And so, yeah, I think it would have been different conversation, a different partnership, and I would have done things differently if I had the knowledge that I do now.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so important for women to know how to pay the bills, but also whether you want to make your own money or not, like that's a whole other conversation. But it's one of those aspects of your life, just like health or anything, those basic human life skills that I think every individual needs to learn, because you do begin to feel trapped in I can't, or it's scary, therefore I'm not going to have that conversation. But I've had so many conversations with women who want to invest in themselves, whether it is a small amount or a larger amount, and they're like, he won't let me, or my partner won't let me. And like you said, it's not about we can't afford it or he won't let me, but it is this deeper, you know, I love, are you a fan of Glennon Doyle, like Untamed, her new book?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I love her dearly. And I love this concept of untaming yourself, right? To say, why
Right.
can't I? Or what is it in me that desire that I want to become something, or that I want to invest in something? How, I'm always like, how can you, right? Put that how can you hat on.
Right. And it's funny, it's a great thing that you said that, so many women, or when the people are married, they say, well, my husband does all the finances, or the wife is the one that pays the bill. All of a sudden, when you have that mindset and that terminology, there's a separation that happens. I'm a huge firm believer that no matter who is in charge of doing what with the finances, everyone needs to be included. Everyone needs to be on the same page. And if you put up and have a blind eye to what your partner is doing with your finances, I feel like it sets you up for failure. Because God forbid, and I've had so many of my readers reach out to me with these stories, if something were to happen to the spouse that takes care of the finances and you never took the time or made the effort to understand or be involved and work as a team, all of a sudden when something happens to that partner or spouse, you're left in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what was going on with the money, where to turn, what questions to ask. And so I think it's very important that husbands, wives, partners, they work on finances together, even though the roles might look very different individually.
Mm-hmm. Even just like documenting the process. There's so much technology now, like using, I mean, I use systems all the time in my business, but using something like a Loom video, like LOOM.com, to just say, hey, this is how I pay the bills online, or this is how I do something else. And then having that documented so that okay, this month I'm just going to challenge myself to do this, to get uncomfortable, to learn a new skill. You can still delegate. Doesn't mean you have to do it, but to know what's going where. Because I remember my own personal story. I put a lot of power and mental faith in my husband, my partner, that, he knew what was going on. And then when we dissected it, I was like, oh my gosh, like you don't. And this is actually way worse. And if I'm not putting energy and attention towards our financial goals and our financial future, we're not going to get there. And if I have a goal and you have a goal, we can work on this together. But yeah, there's so much tied up in it. Do you have, I'm curious your thoughts on teaching these skills to our children, right? It's also like, don't talk about the money in front of the kids. Like, do you get your son involved in like how to pay bills and all of that and the budgeting?
Oh, yes. Yes. My son is heavily involved in what I do. My son started learning about money when he was just 3 years old. And at that time, I was a single mom making less than $24,000 a year. But I also knew at that time how important it was that my son learn at a very young age, just not money concepts, but money habits. And the only way I felt like my son could truly understand the value of money was he had to have his own money to understand those true concepts. So I started giving him allowance at 3 years old, and I started by using just my spare change. I mean, I didn't have a lot at the time. After I became a single mom, and even before then, my son literally, I am not the type of mom that says, I won't talk to my son about our finances because he's too young. He's not going to understand. He doesn't need to know about it. I don't want to cause him extra stress. No, I am the type of mom. I am very, very open with my son. He helps me budget. He helps me with our financial goals. He sits down with me and colors in our goal trackers. He helps me stuff my cash envelopes. It's almost like me and my son, we have monthly finance meetings ourselves. We sit down and we talk about his financial goals. Like currently right now, he's on his way to saving 100 quarters. It's something that he really wanted to do. So we're talking about that and how he can, exchange his pennies and make them into quarters. And even though it's something small, we talk about it. We talk about mommy's financial goals.
I love it.
And when we go out and we go to the park and on our way home, my son says to me, hey, Mom, how much money do we have in our fun envelope? And I'll say, well, why? And he goes, I want to stop by and get ice cream, but I wanted to see how much we had in our fun envelope. At 7 years old, for a child to understand the trade-offs of spending is pretty remarkable. Yeah. And he knows that because he helped me stuff that cash envelope, that fun cash envelope, when I got my paycheck.
I love that.
He knows when me and mommy go out, we use our fun envelope and we have a certain limit to spend. So I am very open with my son. And look, I don't know if there is a wrong or right way with how much you expose to your children with finances. What I do know is that they see so much more than what you will ever understand, because it's not just about teaching. I don't sit down and say, okay, how am I going to teach my son about money today? I know that is done by being the example in my son's life of what it looks like to have good money management habits. And just from being that good example, we teach them more than we will ever know.
I love that. So a lot of people probably come to you because they're in debt, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the first thing? Okay. I have a personal question for you that I know a lot of people have is there's debt and then there's savings. So how do you help people get out of debt but plan for their future?
Yeah. So, one of the big things that happens when readers come to me is they have, for some reason, this underlying concept. I don't know where it was built from or where it comes from, that they have to do one or the other. If they want to pay off debt, they can't save. If they want to save, then that means they have to give up all the other financial priorities in their lives. It's almost like go at it 100% or don't go at it at all.
It's like that all or nothing mentality that
it is. It really,
yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And it's something I fight on a daily basis because I am the type of person that I believe you can do both. I paid off $77,000 of debt while going on an all cash paid vacation to Cabo. So I know for a fact that you can do and achieve both. When people come to me and they say to me, Miko, I have debt, but look, I'm a single mom and I know how important saving for my child's future is. And in my gut and in my heart, it's something that I want to do. So what I tell them is, that means essentially you have two financial priorities. You want to be able to save for your child's future and you want to pay off debt. But then the hard question comes, what's more important right now? And usually, if you are a younger single mom, paying off that debt comes first. And so you can say, okay, 90% of my extra discretionary income is going to go towards debt, but I'm going to put a little bit towards my son's future. What that does is psychologically, it takes care of that guilt, that stress, that worry that you're not taking action right now. I will never forget the day that I wanted to start a 529 college fund for my son. And I had so much debt. I was drowning in it. And I literally felt stuck. But I also knew that this feeling in my gut of wanting to provide for my child in that way would never be taken care of if I didn't take some type of action now. And that was $10 a month. I saved $10 a month. It's all I could do while paying off my debt. But you know what? It was something. And so when you're talking about doing both things, small actions add up. And I'm not just talking about a monetary value. I'm talking about a psychological, there's something that psychologically that we get benefit from taking that small action. Mm-hmm. So that's what I believe.
And I love that. I mean, we've heard this over and over again, like with habit formation, and it's almost like we don't believe it because we have this, what do you call it? Like we want it now. What am I trying to say? Like that.
Instant gratification.
Yes. Instant gratification. Like, oh, I'll just wait until I win the lottery and then I'll pay off all this debt, but I'm going to rack it up, in the meanwhile, like I'm not changing my spending habits or, I don't even want to open my bank accounts to look at it. And, you've got to do the uncomfortable work and you have to be willing to sit with your shit. Like you have to be willing to sit with, wanting to swipe that credit card and be like, I don't really need that stuff. Like, I think this whole COVID pandemic has really, curbed people's spending habits. Like, I'm curious what you're noticing in your community during the pandemic when you weren't able to go out and spend as much money.
Yeah. So the number one thing that I'm seeing is more and more people are realizing how important saving is. And I've also noticed not just for people personally, but small businesses as well. I've been hearing, I wish I would have started saving, a year ago. People have lost their jobs and they literally have nothing to fall back on. And so I'm seeing more of a priority emphasis on saving money, even if people have been on a debt-free journey. Some of them, and what I do recommend if your income is unstable or you have been hit hard financially by the pandemic, it's okay. I'm giving you permission. It's okay to reprioritize your financial goals. It's okay to put a halt on your debt payoff so you can focus on saving. Because when I say that budgeting and personal finance is personal, it means that it shifts and it tweaks and you have to perfect it in your life when life changes. And for a lot of people, life has changed because of this pandemic. And so many people are afraid. So many people feel guilty to not continue on their debt payoff journeys. I've heard that a lot from my readers. I feel horrible. I feel like I'm giving up on my goal because I'm not paying off debt intensely. And I have to step back with them and tell them it's okay because you're doing something that's more important now that you know you're going to need and rely on. So that's one of the things I'm also seeing.
Interesting. I'm so grateful that I I was going to say some of my money shit in order. I feel like it's a relationship, just like anything else. You can't just take a crash course on it and get your systems in order and then forget about it. But I'm so grateful that I learned a lot through my diagnosis because I am a breadwinner, or I am the breadwinner in the house. And during this pandemic, having that nest egg, but also not realizing like, yeah, can you make things happen? And could I have made more money? Probably. But I also needed time to grieve and to like homeschool and to be with my kids and to deal with my emotions. And it's like life happens to us and we have to be prepared for it. And too often, we're just living paycheck to paycheck in that instant gratification. And if we see this discomfort as an opportunity for growth and say, oh crap, like I need to change my spending habits, or I need to make more, or I need to, cut my expenses, and save, like saving is a priority. I also am looking at like the generations before, like my parents, and how hard they worked. And then now that they're retired, the inability to give themselves permission to once like spend the money that they've been saving forever, but two, also how hard they worked. And some of them have nothing to show for it. And now's the time where it's like, your body's falling apart. Your life is falling apart. You have nothing to reinvest in your health. And, putting that burden on your children, I never want my children to feel.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. I also look at my mom, and I feel like thinking and worrying about the now when it comes to our finances is really important, but it's also really important to look at the big picture. So many of the time we're on a super fast, intense journey to take care of everything now. We want to pay off the debt now. We want to, and so much of the time the big picture is forgotten. When I talk about investing, so many people say, well, why don't you talk more about like stock investing or bond investing as a mom? And it's because my true passion and focus is on investing in yourself. When I talk about investments, I talk about investing in yourself. And one way that you do that is making sure that you are able to provide your children and yourself with the life you want after you retire. And a big part of that is making sure that we is in order now so we can have that. And I definitely, I do look at my mom in a lot of ways, and I don't feel like she's financially ready to retire, even though she desperately wants to. It's taught me a lot of lessons and opened my eyes to the life that I want with my son. And I have plans to retire early. I just, we talk about, you say instant gratification. And one of the things that I talk about when people say, I want things now, it's why a lot of people go into debt, is to have that instant gratification is by becoming a patient spender. It's holding off and saving for what you want rather than getting it right now and not having the money to do so.
I like that term, patient spender.
Yeah, patient. And it's one of the things that drastically changed my life. It was one of those lasting changes, the aha moments where I realized that not only was I spending money to deal with emotional issues, but I was doing it for the instant gratification of buying something new, that high that you get, that feeling that you get. But what so many people don't realize when they're doing that is that feeling and high of buying something new that you want right now, it dissipates. That feeling doesn't last forever. And so you have to feed that. And that oftentimes causes spending unnecessarily, but putting yourself in a black hole of debt.
I always say, like, I'm a huge fan of Danielle Laporte. Do you know Danielle Laporte?
I do not.
Okay, so Danielle Laporte is, I mean, she's been in the coaching world for a while. She's friends with like Marie Forleo. Do you know Marie Forleo?
I do not.
Oh, look at you. I'm just introducing you. It's so funny. The online world, there's like little pockets, right? And you're like, oh yes, I know these people. So then you know everybody. But if you're not in that world and you're in like a different industry or category, you're like, oh, do you know this person? I'm like, no, I have no idea. So it's so interesting how that happens. So a lot of my work, I mean, Danielle Laporte's work really inspired what I do, which is she has something called the desire map. And I always say, like she says, it's not the thing you're after, it's the feeling, right? So why do you want to buy those new clothes? Why do you want to buy that new car? Because you want this sense of freedom, or, you know, I don't know, the season changed and you feel inspired, or it makes you feel better. Or you've gained some weight post-COVID and now you're like, I want to feel more confident or whatever. So it, like you said, it's the feeling that you're after. So I always tell people, great, reverse engineer that feeling. So when I was literally dying, I did not want to feel like I was dying, right? I wanted to feel alive. Well, what could I have done to feel alive? I didn't have to spend all of this money to feel alive. I had to like surround myself with people who made me feel really good. I had to put really good food in my body. I had to, you know, watch things that made me laugh. I had to go for a walk and just like focus on the things that mattered. And it's so interesting because I don't know why I say that all the time. So interesting, so interesting. But something like going to a restaurant, I don't really enjoy that experience a lot of the times. I don't, especially if you're bringing children. It's like the biggest waste of money. You might as well just light your money on fire. But why do people do that? Because they think, oh, I need a break, right? I need a break, and they're go, or they want another experience. But if you're putting shit into your body, if it's not food that you're just all in for this experience, it's like we're just wasting it, living unconsciously. And if we can reverse engineer, it becomes richer. So yes, go to the restaurant. We actually went to one, well, for Father's Day, my husband and I, when something opened, we actually drove 2 hours to go to a restaurant.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like, because where we are, it wasn't open. And it was the most magical experience because we haven't been out in months. And then after that was done, I'm like, you know what? That cup is full. That cup is full. And we don't need to do this every week. Like, we can create that connection at home, making a meal together, being intentional.
Yeah, I love that. I 100% agree with that.
It just blows my mind, the psychology behind it. So I'm curious what your perspective is when you started versus now, when it came to kind of what you were talking about the journey, but I really don't think it has any, like, money is the pain point, but what do you think's really going on? What are you really teaching people in your community?
I think and believe that, you know, we're doing this. People ask me all the time, you go, yeah, you're a mom, you're a single mom, but is there, you know, the budget mom? What does the mom actually represent? I think that what we're doing here is, I know that we can change the lives of the adults. We can change the lives of the mothers, of the fathers, of the parents. But what happens is when you change their life, you ultimately change the child's life. What we're doing is we're creating generational change around financial literacy and education. Because like I said, you say budgeting and you say finances, people automatically think about the numbers, and it has nothing to do with the numbers. It has to do with the individual. And I really do think that what we're doing with the budget mom is we're changing the life of the individual, which then changes the life of the children. And that's ultimately our goal here, is we want to change that generational money management skills that started with the adult, that can now be passed on through being a good example by teaching those money lessons that they're learning down to their children. This journey There are a lot of things that I have learned on my journey, but one of the biggest one is contentment. And I'm not talking about just contentment with the things around me, but a deeper level of internal contentment. And that contentment was built from learning to love myself and who I am, being confident in my role as a mom to my son. It's about finding hope with my finances instead of feeling helplessness. There are deeper things at play. And I think a lot of that for me was changing who I am and giving myself this ability to be truly grateful for what I have and an internal contentment. And I think that's what that journey is about.
I love that. The impact to even just, like you said, create that generational change and knowing that how you show up. I remember when I had my son, I was 18 years old, my oldest, he's 15 now. And I looked at him for the first time and I thought, I need to become the person that I most desire you to be. Because if I want to inspire you or, not become a statistic, I have to first do it so that I can be a good teacher for you. And that has led me through every action that I've been taking in all aspects of my life. And money, I told you, I was like, one of my kids is going to come in, kids, dogs, this is life. But yeah, it's all about becoming, because then they're learning and this is how we're going to make an impact in the world.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
I hope you can edit that out.
We don't edit any of this. This is real life.
My dog. I am dealing with a 7-month-old rescue puppy.
Aww.
And like a lot of people, I am safe at home, working from home. And so I'm juggling, a 7-year-old son and a 7-month-old puppy. And at times it's like, I'm trying to work, but at the same time, it's craziness outside the office.
I know. We have 2 dogs and we had a rescue dog previous and he was a basket case. Like he wasn't even adoptable. And I went in there and advocated for him. My husband was losing his mind. This dog was like a lab Dalmatian mix. He was born in a barn. He would literally stand on top of the kitchen table. He ate like my Beats headphones and my husband's sunglasses in like an hour that we were gone. And he was losing his mind. I'm like, it's okay. I'm like, we got to work on this. He's like, Heather, why do you rescue these things? I'm like, I just feel so bad for them. So
yes, my dog is much the same. We are still working with him, but we were really blessed and fortunate. He's a sweetheart. And so
they always have a good heart. Yeah. They always have a good heart. They just been a little misguided.
Yes.
It's like all the people who it's like, you can learn about budgeting. It's okay. It's okay. I know you've had some traumatic past around money. We got this. We can get you back into a healthy place.
Yes.
So I have a question for you. What do you say to that mom who it might be listening? We have all different types of women who listen to this podcast, but I hear this a lot from single parents. They will say, I'm a single parent, I can't, or I'm only on one income, or I hear a lot of hopelessness from single women who are parenting children. And, there is this stigma and around oh, she's a single mom, but we don't hear that from, he's a single dad. And, or there's a breadwinner, right? There's someone who's in a partnership, but there's only one income. And so I'm just curious, I hate that whole, it's like, we can change that. What do you say to her?
You are so much stronger than you will ever know. I was that mom. Yeah. I was that single mom that said, I can't. I don't have the resources. I'm not smart enough. And one of the things that I learned on this journey is you are capable of anything you want to achieve. And one of the ways that I show my readers that is by being that example. There is nothing more that I want to give to these single moms than strength. because a lot of the times that is lost. We forget how strong we really are, how powerful we really are. I think that, one of the things that place, and that comes from, finding that confidence in yourself, is start small. One of the things that I did to build that confidence as a single mom and someone who is tackling their finances is I started with small goals. And every single time I hit one of those small goals, a little bit more confidence was built. I found a little bit more hope. Till one day, my friend, I was talking about buying my house, and my friend said to me, well, why don't you just buy your dream home with cash? That thought never crossed my mind because I was a single mom. There was no way that I could achieve something so great and so big in my life until she sat me down and she planted that thought in my mind. And that night I fell asleep and I slept like a baby because the first time in my life, I knew that was the path that I was meant to take. But in the beginning, I was hesitant. I didn't feel like, one, I had the capability. Two, I didn't feel like I had the strength, the dedication, the effort that would take to hit such an enormous goal. So I started small. I said, okay, I have this huge goal of buying my dream home with cash. I'm going to start with $100. And when I hit that $100, I was like, dang, okay, I did that. As a single mom, I did that. Okay, next month it's $200. And I worked my way for over a year. I did that. Until finally I look back at that year. I had all these savings trackers printed out and posted on my walls. And I said, if I can do that, okay, if I can pay off my debt, if I can save what I have, I can do this. So it's about starting small, build up that confidence. But the one thing that I always want single moms to know is that you can literally do anything. And that's a really important thing that I want everyone to realize.
I think that's so important. And I love how you said she planted that seed, like she planted that thought, because your thoughts will create your reality. And I, especially during the last, 2020, the last 6 months, but even just, hear people say like this, just low energy, low mental energy. And I had my own history of mental health and stuff. And really just looking at it and going, what are the thoughts that you're telling yourself around money? Because that's what we're talking about. And just change the story. Like, how can I, if you're looking for evidence on why you don't have enough, you will find more of that. But if you are looking for evidence on where you can create more and, get out your journal and a pen and paper and follow the budget mom, and start asking yourself, how can I, you'll begin to manifest more of that. We just had a money challenge in one of my groups. And I told the ladies, these are women in business. And I said, okay, it's a $5,000 challenge in 30 days. And some of them were shitting their pants. And then at the end of the 30 days, they're like, I did it, Heather. I actually got to 10,000. And some of it was money that they brought in, and some of it was money that they saved. Because, if you're saving $100 that you would have spent somewhere else, that's money that you've gained, right? Because it would have been going out. So it was absolutely phenomenal, considering that they went in thinking I can't and came out thinking, oh my gosh, I did this. And if I can do this, I can do anything. And it is that momentum.
Yeah, I love that, because you ultimately change that person's life. Because now in the future, when they go forward, that small thought in their head saying, I can't, there's no way I could do this. They are their own proof that they can.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah. And I think it's really important. I always tell people, I don't want you to be codependent. Like, I want you to be here, learn what you need to learn, and then go out and share that with the world. Like, that is the ripple effect we're going to make. Right. So, I don't know. You're like the money version of me. I'm like, I love this. This is Mom is in Control, the budgeting mom, helping women change their lives and the next generation. So Kumiko, where can people find you? What are you
Yeah,
up?
so, I post daily on my Instagram. I have for the last 2.5 years. I'm very, very passionate about showing up for my followers every single day. So you can find a lot of what's happening with my daily spending. I share all of my real numbers, all of what's really happening with my spending in my real life over on Instagram. We have really great detailed instructional type videos on YouTube. And we focus a lot of our time and attention here at the Budget Mom for free resources that you can find on thebudgetmom.com.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And what are you passionate about right now? Like what's on your heart? What are you working on? What are you excited about?
Right now, for me, I'm really focusing on spending more time with my son. So we just launched a new product called the Live Rich Planner last month, and I wasn't around as much as I would like to. It's funny, I started the Budget Mom, and when I did, I realized I had an opportunity to spend more time with my son. And that came with being an entrepreneur and owning my own business. But what I quickly found within a couple of years of doing the Budget Mom, I was actually spending less time with him than I did when I worked just an 8 to 5 job. And so this last year, I have been focusing on not just being physically present with my son, but being mentally present. That means disconnecting from the rest of the world, trusting that the Budget Mom will still exist if I step away for a day to be with my son. And so that's really where my heart is now and where I'm really focusing. And, I'm trying to reposition the business in a way and grow the business in a way where I could still be there for my son in the way that I want to. So that's really what I'm focusing on.
I love that. Yeah, it's all entrepreneurship can be a blessing and a curse. And I always tell people,
Yes.
like, if you're not doing personal growth work and you're a business owner, I don't know how you're going to survive. But
Yeah.
it was one of those things where I'm like, wow, food and exercise, like this, I don't care if I don't just want my butt to look good. Like this is a life sustaining skill that if I want to be the mother that I want to be and focused energy and attention with my clients, I have to be on my game in all areas of my life. So I truly do not understand how people get it, like do what they do without working on their insides.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's something I definitely learned. I went into the Budget Mom full force. I was the type of person, like, I put myself last to my son, my family, my business. And I really quickly realized that wasn't going to work, that in order to be, the best that I could be for my followers, for my son, for my family, I needed to start with me first. And that was really hard for me to do in the beginning. It's one of those things that I talk about. One of the number one questions people ask me is, Miko, what happened to your money mindset when you had your son, James? And the funny thing that happens that people don't realize is that we go from being selfish spenders to selfless spenders. Before we have children, what do we spend our money on? Ourselves. After our children, what do we spend our money on? Our children. That's the things that are greater than ourselves, our financial goals for our children. And so for me as a business owner, that's exactly what happened. I went from being completely, selfless. It was almost like a switch. I went from being selfless to being a little bit selfish with my time because I knew that I had to take care of myself first. So that's just one of the things that I realized, but it was very, very hard as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Especially a mother too. I always tell people, because I advocate a lot about that. People would be like, I feel selfish or guilty when I'm creating the space. And I'm like, you know what? It's different, kind of like what you were saying. It's a different definition, but when you're doing it for a bigger purpose, right? When I'm creating, carving out those times for the morning routine, or I'm taking a step back, or just the little pockets of time. Like if you're desiring, oh man, I just want a solo walk, or I need to take that bubble bath, or whatever it is, it's not selfish when you know that you're filling up your cup, and that is giving back to other people. And a lot of the women that I'm sure you and I both attract are the ones who have that full heart and that bigger impact, and they want to be the change, and they truly love their family and want to create that legacy for them. But you have to realize that your energy matters, your soul matters, and how you show up in the world definitely impacts them in a positive way. So it's kind of redefining what selfless is, and giving to yourself can be a selfless act.
That's so true. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love this conversation. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm excited to dive deeper into your work and to share more of you with my community.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, Mom is in Control listeners. It's Sarah.
And me, Sasha.
And we are the co-hosts of the podcast Dear White Women, which is a show that eases you into uncomfortable conversations about racism. So we know anti-racist work is at the top of mind for everyone right now, and we really believe that anti-racist work is not a moment, it's not a thing that we're doing right now, it's a lifestyle. And so for us, we're making our work concrete, practical, and accessible for the long haul. And Heather invited us to come on her podcast to share just one of the resources we're committed to, which is our monthly virtual book club. So we've started a Patreon, and if you head over to our podcast website, dearwhitewomen.com, we would love for you to join us. The book club starts in August, so you'll have time to grab the book and start reading if you join us now. Thanks again.